Welcome to the Broncos Source Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Broncos Source Podcast. My name is Steven. Right there with me is the co-host Sean and Adam. How you guys doing today? Starting off with Adam, and then we'll go to Sean. Adam, how are you doing? And yeah, nice jersey.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be here again this week. Good to have you back, Stephen. Glad you're feeling better. I'm a little under the weather myself this week, but I'm good. But yeah, I guess we'll talk about the game. It wasn't good. It wasn't fun. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't any of that. So that's where I'm at, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, the game was over early, so we've had a little bit of time here to let it get past us, I guess. But yeah, it was, a lot of what we expected, maybe a little bit of what we didn't. So, I'm not overly beat up about it, but, room for improvement, I guess, and we'll talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Starting off, so going into today's game, we were all of us had the Ravens winning this game, but we thought it was going to be a pretty competitive game, like somewhat of a closer game. It wasn't going to be like necessarily a blowout loss by any means of the imagination. We had the Broncos being competitive for a majority of the entire game, right? And, if you look at our score predictions, they were pretty close scores. I mean, they weren't like, they were basically one possession scores, right? Well, the Broncos start off the game, and one of the first plays of the game is an interception, and it was a little bit of an overthrow, a throw by Bo Nix. Not a great throw, but not a great attempt by little Jordan Humphrey, who has had a horrible year so far this year. He's just been bad all around, both sides. But anyways, there's an interception, start off the game, not good whatsoever, and the Ravens are in good field position. Then the Broncos do a 3-and-out, which has been something that we've loved. We've been seeing all year, which was awesome, right? So, hey, now we got the ball back. And the Broncos offense, they start marching down the field a little bit. Then it's just like back and forth. And then all of a sudden the Ravens, they caught fire and they didn't stop for the entire game. And they found their click, and the Broncos defense couldn't catch up. And the Broncos were simply outmatched defensively. Their defense today was, as you can look at the score yourselves, it was bad. And that's putting it kindly. It was bad. The secondary was horrible, and of course the Broncos are having some injuries with, especially notable name is PJ Locke, who is injured right now. He should be back next week, I think, according to reports. But he was definitely missed today, that's for sure. Devon Key had a horrible game, replacing PJ Locke and who else is on defense that's missing. But it was a bad game defensively, secondary. The wide receivers for the Ravens, Flowers. I mean, basically everybody had good games. Even Mark Andrews, he only had 2 carries, but he had 2 big first downs, right, for the Ravens today, right? So it just the Broncos got torched. Really, that's really what I have to say. The Broncos got torched today. The offense for the Broncos really only had a few good plays. I mean, Nix, he did make a good few throws to, Sutton, and then, a couple other ones as well. Then there was that weird, trick Philadelphia, or I should say the Philly special, going back to the Super Bowl between the Eagles and Patriots years ago. But the Broncos did a Philly special, which I thought was kind of cool. But again, that barely counted as a touchdown because Nix barely got possession of the ball at the line of the end zone, and that could have been negated, but it was in barely, not by much, by a couple inches probably. But other than that, the Broncos offense was just bad today. Everything was just bad. Broncos were simply outplayed, outmatched, outnumbered. They were just outrun by the Ravens offense. And either the Broncos defense is, I think it's still very, very good. It just, we're missing PJ Locke, but also the Ravens, they read the Broncos defense. I think they've been looking at the playbook a little bit. Vance Joseph's still a good defensive head coach, not a head coach, but he'll probably be a head coach unless if the Broncos bring him back next year. But yeah, it was just one of those days where you just didn't want to watch the game. You turn off the TV and just try to focus on something else instead of, having to watch the Broncos today. But you know what? There were a couple positives, but other than that there was nothing really to be excited about whatsoever in this game whatsoever.
Yeah. I would like to add outcoached to the all the outs that you just had there. For some reason, the Broncos defense didn't play to their identity A lot of, they're known for blitzing and bringing pressure, especially on what is clearly not a 100% Lamar Jackson. I thought the Broncos would be able to, or I thought they would blitz more. They didn't do that. They were really concerned with keeping him in the pocket, which gave him tons of time to throw the football. They did not play as much man coverage or straight man coverage as they usually do. And then in the times that they did, obviously, Jaquan McMillan got burned in the end zone for that touchdown. And just, I feel like the Broncos were a little too okay with like changing their game plan to suit what the Ravens do, and instead of playing to their own strengths on defense. And I think that's why they ended up getting torched there. And then offensively, we were talking about this before the podcast, Steven. I don't particularly think this offense is good at anything. I just don't. There's not a lot of talent here. I think the jury's still out on Bo Nix. I still think he makes some really bonehead decisions. Sometimes I'm like, who are you throwing the ball to? Like, especially in the red zone, he's had some opportunities where if he just calms down, he can hit a wide open receiver in the end zone, and for whatever reason, he just amps himself up too much and overthrows wide open people in the end zone. And his deep throw is not where we want it to be right now. I know he's not exactly known for that. He wasn't known for that coming out of college. But that 4th down and 1 in the first quarter where he had Franklin wide open, I mean, you have to hit that. If you want to beat teams like the Ravens, you have to hit passes like that. But, I mean, to Sean's point earlier, I didn't expect the Broncos to win the game coming into it. I did not think that they were ready for a game like this. I know people were like, oh, it's their biggest test yet, and we're going to see. I think we all kind of knew where the Broncos were going to land here. And I don't think losing by 31 is what I mean by that, but I just don't think offensively they weren't ready. On paper, they're not ready for a game like this. And then shockingly, I thought defensively they were exposed today in a lot of ways, which hopefully upcoming teams like the Chiefs and the Falcons won't be able to expose them on man coverage. But there were a lot of things that came out of this game that were concerning. Bo Nix, though, on offense, one more time, there were struggles, but he's really, really good on the ground. He's really good with his legs. He's dangerous. Yeah. So there is that. But, overall, obviously not a very good game today from the Broncos. 6 of 14 on 3rd down for one of the worst 3rd down conversion teams in the NFL. I think they're 28th or 29th. And just they've fallen out of the top 10 in rushing and passing defense now. So a lot of things that they need to recover from after this game, Sean.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I'm going to try and be a little bit more optimistic here. And I think what you made a great point, Adam, about coaching. But my thing with coaching is I think it was adjustments, right? If you're going to get torched by Zay Flowers, what is your adjustment? And in my mind, that probably should have been Pat Surtain maybe following him or whatever is within the confines of your defense. But Tony Romo referenced it multiple times. Our margin for error is so small. And like we talked before we signed on, you hit Franklin there and you score a touchdown. You make a tackle right before the half when Zay Flowers got that, and you've got 7 guys with an opportunity to tackle one player with only one blocker in the area. You make those plays, and we're talking about a totally different start to the second half. You can still run the ball, so we immediately panicked. We went straight to passes in the 3rd quarter, and we possessed the ball for 6 plays, and the game was over by the end of the 3rd quarter. As far as the 3rd down defense, Cooper loses contain on a 3rd and long, and Lamar basically walks to a 1st down. Those are the types of things where you're playing Lamar Jackson. That's your number one responsibility is contain and keep him within the pocket. And they referenced in the first half, right? They're saying, look how great the Broncos are. They're keeping him within the pocket. They make him stay inside and it collapses. Well, the second you lose contain against a league MVP, and he does even injured, he does exactly what he's going to do. So, those types of plays, it's 41-10. There's no way to, split hairs on that. You got your butts kicked, but I think there were some small things that could have kept this game a lot closer, and that margin for error, because it's so small, you make those errors and you lose 41-10 instead of losing, I don't know, 24-20 or whatever it possibly could be. I don't want to try to go back to each player or whatever, but from an offensive identity standpoint, you should have used Javonte more, especially in the goal line situation, so you don't have to have Cortland Sutton throwing touchdown passes. We didn't use the tight end. We didn't use the tight ends at all this week. After Troutman has a career game last week, he touches the ball, I think, one time, and I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I saw one play action pass in the first half, and that was the only play action pass of the entire game. So I think there was opportunities. The play calling and the adjustments, I think, were the coaching issues. And you scrap it, you move on. It's one of the biggest games of the year next week. Got to move on.
Yeah. And the thing is that's positive too is that the Broncos are still, like I was telling the guy at Liz today when I was at the Haas store, the Broncos are still in the playoff position. It's not like, oh, they're out of it. They still have room left, and that's a good thing, right? I mean, the same thing happened last year. The Broncos, they were in the hunt, but they weren't even seeded last year, right? So the important thing that the Broncos are still in there and they still have this breathing room, right? And now it's just like, okay, forget about the Ravens game. Yeah, albeit it was horrible. Everything was about it was bad. But like Sean alluded to, there were some things that you could take away from it, take some notes and say, hey, this was good, but let's try this a little bit more. Let's keep running the ball. Let's give the ball to Javonte. Let's keep running it, and don't go back to the passes when it, or running whenever it's not working. Just try to keep them guessing. Don't like make it too easy for the defense to read our offense, right? And so, but yeah, it's nice to see the Broncos are still in that position to where they can still be in the playoff spot. However, as a lot of people have been, saying today, and I think Sunday Night Football, they even mentioned it on their Instagram pages recently that the Broncos have one of the toughest remaining schedules in the NFL. And that's not going to be easy. I mean, it's going to be a uphill challenge for the Broncos to make the playoffs. And can they do it? As of right now, the offense, I don't think it can do it, especially against good defenses. But because a lot of the games, I'm not going to try and say, oh, well, the win against the Panthers doesn't count because of the Panthers. I mean, hey, the Panthers beat the Saints, but maybe the Saints are almost as bad as the Saints.
They're both awful.
Yeah, they're both awful, right? It was an awful game, but I mean, if you're a fan of both, I mean, it was somewhat of a decent game, but yeah, I don't know. I still think that there's hope, but yeah, go ahead.
When you talk about the playoffs, right? I mean, the AFC East is cooked. It's the Bills, and everybody else is already pretty much out of it. So if you want to be optimistic, if you can beat the Chiefs once and you take your other two games against the Chargers and the Raiders, you got 8 wins. You really only got to find one or two more.
The Colts are on the schedule. The Browns are on the schedule. I don't know, Steven, who posted that about the Broncos' tough schedule, but that's not factual.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was. I think it was like the 4th or 5th toughest schedule. It wasn't the toughest. I don't.
Well, it's all based on record, right? And the Chiefs are
based on record. Yeah.
So you got to play the Falcons.
I guess.
I mean,
I still see 9 wins. If you
I
said, you beat
9 wins.
You beat the Ravens, the Raiders and Chargers. You get the Colts,
Browns,
game.
the Colts.
That's 10 wins for an average team.
Yeah, and I mean,
so I think we can still get between 8 and 10 wins this season. So.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried. Again, we'll talk about this on a later pod, but like the Colts game, it kind of concerns me because Joe Flacco, he's burnt the Broncos before. Now he is older, but you still is kind of like we always allude to over here on the podcast. There's those trap games. You got to win those. The Browns, we won that last year. They had DTR quarterback, and then of course they had a bunch of injured quarterbacks. And Deshaun Watson, we don't have to worry about him, but still, you got to win those trap games. Sean and Adam, and I don't know. Like I still think, for sure, it's still 9-10 wins is definitely doable, but you got to beat one of the 2 games against the Chiefs. You have to, because if you don't, I don't think this is a playoff team, or they're not going to make the playoffs. That's for sure. But big step is for next week. But my closing remarks as we head into the last segment to talk about the Chiefs game, all I have to say is that, today's play calling was bad. Where the previous couple of weeks we saw much better play calling, really good play calling from Sean Payton. Now, granted, it was against bad teams, but it was like, hey, at least we're, figuring things out, trying to be a little bit more thinking outside of our box. Where, the only play that I thought was, again, unique was, the Philly special today, and that was it. I mean, other than that, it was bad. But yeah, other than that, just move past today, focus on next week in Kansas City, get that out of the way. But still, it's an important game, because if you win that game, I mean, it's going to definitely help your chances to make the playoffs. And at this point, it's just that try your best. I mean, it's not like, hey, it just try to get a win. Just try to get a win.
My big thing is, yes, play calling was questionable, but the execution today from both sides of the football was not good. And if you want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, 1 of 5 on 4th down is not going to get it done. 4 of 16 on 3rd down is not going to get it done. So obviously they need to improve in a lot of areas, but we're going against the best coaching staff in the NFL next week. There is zero margin for error once again, because we're not as talented as the Chiefs. Right. And I know that a lot of people are like, oh, the Chiefs offense, this or that this year. I think they're just playing with their food. They don't have to show us anything on their offense until they get to the playoffs, which is what they usually do.
Yeah.
And you better believe that Kansas City is going to come out against the Denver Broncos, a divisional game, and want to put their foot down and say, this is our division. And, that's the end of that discussion. So let's talk about that game, Steven.
Yeah. Yeah. As you said, the Chiefs are not playing for the regular season. They're playing for the Super Bowl. So really they're just practicing right now. And so it doesn't really matter if they go undefeated, but right now it's just house play right now. So so next week, the Broncos, they're going to be heading to Kansas City, which is arguably not even much better place than playing in Baltimore. Baltimore, they're loud, but Chiefs are even louder. And, it's not going to be enjoyable, that's for sure, to watch. But still, hey, I mean, the Broncos, last time they played there, of course, they had Russell Wilson behind center. And we all know how that turned out over those 2 years. But still, I mean, the Broncos, they had Rosberg as their interim head coach back then a few years ago. And the Broncos, they nearly got that game, and they were competitive and against the Chiefs team that, went to the Super Bowl, right? And so really for the Broncos, it's just, again, stay competitive, see what you can do. And then again, like most of their guys on defense should be coming back from their injuries. Like PJ Locke, he should be back. We'll have to keep an eye on that one, but that's going to be important to see. But like if the Broncos can, if their defense can rebound, like it's been this year, like against against the Saints and against I don't know, the Bucks, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and all, some of those teams that they face, the Jets. I think the Broncos have a chance. Their defense has given them so many chances. That's the reason why the Broncos are where they're at right now, is because of their defense, not necessarily their offense, right? And so really the name of the game is their defense. And if the Broncos are going to have any chance of being competitive or even a chance of winning next week against the Kansas City Chiefs, who are undefeated, the defense has to come through.
And will be.
And will be, right? And that's what I'm praying for. That's what I'm praying for, because I don't want another. Because we've seen in years past where the Broncos, their defense starts off the season extremely high, like in the top 5. Then their defense gets colder as the season, ends. And we've seen that around football, right? That's my worst fear for the Broncos, but I still think we're going to be fine. Vance Joseph, I think they just need to get this game out of their system, right? I mean, it's Lamar Jackson, but still, it was one of those just games, right? So just turn that around. I think the defense will be fine against the Chiefs. And again, last year, I remember we played against the Chiefs in Kansas City. Yeah, our offense was horrible under Russell Wilson in Kansas City, but yeah, our defense was pretty solid. And that's when we had Justin Simmons, who owns Patrick Mahomes. And this is the time of year where I wish we still had Justin Simmons, who was in Atlanta. And I'm happy for Justin, but we just need a guy like Justin Simmons on Sunday to get Patrick Mahomes. And I think we have those guys. We're just the offense needs to just come through. And I think the Chiefs defense, they're scary good. I mean, they were the best defense in the NFL last year. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. We'll do our predictions later. We'll be posting those later this upcoming week. But, right now I'm not going to say it's going to be a great game for the Broncos, but, I think there's a better chance of potentially winning this game than this past week. I think the Broncos are going to fix a lot of the stuff that they had today.
Sean?
Yeah,
I'll go last.
I mean, the one thing that we have, or some of the things that we will be playing them on a short week. So they do have to play Monday Night Football. We get them on a short week for an opponent that right? If we're going to have a chance in this game, we have to control the line of scrimmage and we have to control the time of possession. I think some of your biggest concerns with the defense is, well, they played the whole third quarter because our offense was so bad. If you don't control the clock and the time of possession, that's just going to happen. I mean, they had a bad game anyway, but what are we looking at? No Isaiah Pacheco, and their best receiver is probably an aging DeAndre Hopkins who hasn't really had time there. And Travis Kelce, of course, if he's back, he's had one good game all season. So we always play them competitively, even when we're a bad football team, a team that we knew was out of the playoff race way earlier than where we are in the season now. So I know we're going to play them competitively. I don't think we'll win. But I think we need to feed Javonte. If we do the type of play calling and we involve the tight ends and everything that we did, it doesn't have to be National Tight End Day for you to throw the damn ball to your tight ends. So get back to throwing to Troutman. Let's get these guys involved.
Yeah.
Cortland Sutton, the last 2 weeks after he didn't get targeted, has played fantastic. That double move route on the sideline was great. He's catching the ball, and even in garbage time when it doesn't matter, he's still attacking the ball and getting first downs. So, I think we have an opportunity next week to prove people wrong. I agree with Adam. We're probably going to be playing an undefeated Chiefs team, and they know they probably have this division locked up. So, do I think they overlook us? Probably not, because we beat them. We beat them in the second game last year. But I also do think that it's everyone across the country is going to pick us to lose. Every station, every analyst, every person is going to pick us to lose. And I think we have more of a chance than they're going to give us.
Well, man. So the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, I'll be positive. Okay, I'll be positive. The thing with me is I'm going to tell you how I feel, whether it's positive or not. That's up to you. People listening, that's up to you how you take it. But anyway, last year the Broncos went to Kansas City and they lost 19-8. Close game. Year before that, they went to Kansas City and they lost 27-24. Close game. Year before that, they went to Kansas City and I think it was 22-16. No, sorry.
All one score.
Hold on, what was the score? 22-9. So they have played Kansas City very well. They frustrate Kansas City. No, these are in Kansas City, like games at Kansas City. But yes, one of them would have been. But it's just like the Broncos defensively, they frustrate Patrick Mahomes. They know how to keep him and the Chiefs. They really, I think it was like 2 games in a row under Fangio specifically where they just could not get in the end zone in the red zone against the Broncos. And it's been kind of the same story through a bunch of coaches here. And I do think the Broncos will play close, the problem is that even though they got blown out today by 31 points, they gave up on the run game. 17 carries between Javonte and Jaleel McLaughlin. That's not going to get it done. 17 carries for 52 yards. You know what ranking the Chiefs defense is next week on the run defense? Number 1. That's the number 1 rush defense in the NFL that you're going to be playing against. If you don't establish a run game against Kansas City, which is going to be difficult, then you're dealing with Steve Spagnuolo's exotic looks. He's going to confuse Bo Nix, like straight up. It's going to happen because he does it to everybody. It's really, really hard to play against a Spagnuolo defense. You never know where the pressure's coming from. Chris Jones will shut down the middle. He'll come off the end. Like they just line him up wherever the best matchup is for them. And then their linebackers are probably the best in the NFL. So the Broncos already have trouble with tight ends and using them, against Kansas City's linebackers. That's going to be really tough. And you've got a bunch of playmakers on that defense. You got arguably one of the best cornerbacks in the league on that defense. I think the Broncos may have a chance if the defense can cause a couple turnovers and give the Broncos offense some short fields. but I just don't think the Broncos offense is where it needs to be for games like this right now. And going back to the playoff talk earlier, do I think they can make the playoffs? Absolutely. Because the AFC is kind of weak in the wild card. So I think the Broncos, even if they lose this game, you're only at 5 losses. You can lose another 3, maybe even 4 games and still get in the playoffs. But if we're talking about like a barometer for where a team is, I don't think the Broncos are ready for games like this yet. I do think that they'll be competitive because it's a division game. But offensively, the Broncos just don't have what it takes to beat Kansas City. If I'm wrong, I will come back on the podcast next week and say I was wrong and that the Broncos, beat the Chiefs, which I'm rooting for. Obviously, I don't want to be right about this. But I just, the Chiefs. The problem for me when it comes to Broncos fans or NFL fans in general is they always want to say, oh, the refs this and the refs that. That's why the Chiefs are good. No, the Chiefs are good because the Chiefs are good.
Yeah.
They have the best coaching.
Mm-hmm.
They have the best quarterback. They have the best tight end. And arguably they have the best defense. So if we're going to go in there and beat a team, let's not say, oh, well, they're only undefeated because of the refs. No, we want to beat a team that's good because they're good. And this is the defending Super Bowl champions that we're talking about. And it makes me nauseous talking about them like this because I can't stand them.
Right.
But the truth is the truth, right? And the Broncos, if they want to take that next step this season and a bigger step next season, they're going to have to show the Chiefs, hey, we're for real. Last week was an aberration, and we're going to come in here and beat you guys. And that's really what we want to see out of the Broncos. But with a rookie quarterback and Arrowhead against Spagnuolo, I think it's going to be really hard.
Yeah, not a good recipe for success. That's for sure. Kind of like playing in Seattle for Bo Nix's first week. Not a good recipe because, as you know, the record, it's pretty bad for a rookie quarterback starting week 1, or at least their debut in Lumen Field in Seattle. Like, I think the record is like 4-13, whatever it is, for a rookie quarterback. So it's not a good recipe. As long as we see an improvement, we're good. Like, again, like you alluded to, Sean and Adam, is that the Broncos, they still have, like, they can still lose 3 or 4 games and still have a chance to make the playoffs. I mean, thankfully the Texans, they're having somewhat of a down year compared to last year. Last year they were so good. Where this year, like, they're struggling with injuries and like, I don't know, it's kind of weird in the AFC, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Broncos do make the playoffs, who they're going to match up with. I think it's going to be either the Steelers, which is going to be the most hilarious thing ever. The Texans could be a possibility. Maybe, I don't know if the Chargers sneak in there. We'll see what happens. I mean,
that's a win.
Yeah.
The Broncos.
Yeah, 400%. Yeah. Chargers.
In LA? Oh, dude. Yeah. Third home game against the Chargers.
Yeah. Even in Denver, the Chargers are always going to charger it, right? So you can expect that. But yeah, it's just, would we want, again, we'll talk about this, but would we want a Steelers matchup? I would welcome it. Why not? But it's at this point for the Broncos, again, you're heading into Kansas City. Just show some improvement and prove yourself that, hey, we're not messing around. We're gonna play our butts off to try to win this game. Just don't get beat over by Kansas City. And unfortunately, that might happen. Very well could happen because, again, like, they're the best team in the NFL. And when talking about the refs and everything, people said the same thing about the Patriots when they were good with Tom Brady, right? Oh, the refs, they're letting them win, but hey, look, I mean, it's the Patriots were good. They were the dynasty. Now look at the Patriots. Not so good, right? They've been bad for the last, 7 years, right? 7, 8 years. So, it's just, it happens, right? You're going to have dynasties and, they're eventually going to fall. Like, eventually, and I'm so excited for the day that's going to happen, but eventually the Chiefs dynasty will end. But sometimes I ask myself the question, will it ever end? So we're just going to have to wait for that. But
we're very, very far away from that, Steven.
Yeah,
we got like another 10 years before Mahomes retires. He's going to win another 3 to 5 Super Bowls and probably another 10 AFC championships or AFC West championships. So, I mean, it's but the Broncos,
there are still a lot of good other.
Go ahead.
I mean, Flacco won some, 1-1. Manning had a couple in the Brady dynasty. So I think there are some other quarterbacks that are in the NFL that can win games. The Lions, Lamar. I mean, I watched a lot of that game. Lamar, the Lions looked fantastic today, so I mean, there's ways to get it. I unfortunately think if we get into the playoffs, we'll be the 7 seed and we're going to be playing Baltimore and or Kansas City. again. So,
Sick.
I don't think we're going
love that.
to get as lucky. Yeah, I don't think we're going to get as lucky as to get the AFC South winner of the Steelers. I would love that, but it's not going to happen. Well, I mean, maybe you get Buffalo, but they're so far ahead, and we're probably going to sneak in. The AFC South and the AFC East aren't putting a second team in, I don't think. So it's going to probably be Steelers and us, and I don't know who the third AFC wildcard team is probably going to be, but I'm assuming Steelers, us, and I guess we'll see who can get in with 6 wins. The way some of the
Chargers,
AFC trash.
Chargers maybe.
It absolutely could.
Chargers or Bengals.
Yeah, well, Bengals. Yeah, they won today. So
what? Yeah. One other thing I'd like to say, and people forget this because we beat them last year. 1-16 against the Chiefs since 2015. You don't think the Broncos aren't aware of that though? Like coming into this game, you don't think Sean Payton knows that number? You don't think Bo Nix is aware that the Broncos have been, suffering at the hands of the Chiefs for a long time? I think that plays into. I think it plays into the game next week for sure. I think the Broncos, especially guys that have been here, Sutton and Bowles, they know. They know the Broncos.
Like last year again.
Which coach has the one?
Yeah,
Sean Payton has the one.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So we have the people that have the one. So you hope that means that it's, even if we can split years, we're talking better than what the last decade's been.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to last year, like how did the Broncos beat the Chiefs? Now I understand last year, like the Chiefs were banged up and they were like sick. I remember Patrick Mahomes like had the flu bug. Same thing with like Kelsey. Everyone was sick on the Chiefs, but still, I mean, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. I mean, it's kind of like the
not
flu
buying
game,
that.
Right? Yeah, and so it's just like, here's the thing. Like I still think that the Broncos, again, like Sean has alluded to, control the line of scrimmage. Man, that's really what you have to do. Again. Get Patrick Mahomes, sack him, pressure him, because that's what they did last year in Denver. Like, I mean, they controlled every single bit of that game. Now, there was a little bit of time where I think there was like that blocked field goal in Denver. I remember how frustrating that was, right? Will Lutz didn't have that greatest start, but it was just, the Broncos, they were able to control the Chiefs the entire game. That's what we need to see. Again, I'm not expecting it because, again, at Kansas City, the Broncos, kind of like, playing against Vegas, in Las Vegas, the Broncos have never had good success for a long time playing in that stadium, right? Or when they were originally in Oakland, right? So it's just, I don't know. There are places the Broncos can and they can't win. Baltimore is another example. It's been, I don't know how many years.
1-8 now.
Like I think the last time the Broncos won in Baltimore was like during the Manning era or pre-Manning era, something like that. So it's just
2012. They won.
So I'm not expecting a win either. Again, our predictions will be coming out later on this week, but I'm just hoping for better results. But when as we finish off tonight, we're talking about the playoffs. The Bills, man. I like the Bills. I mean, this coming into the season, I was a little bit worried about the Bills. I'm like, they might be somewhat going through a mini rebuild. They smacked a lot of people in the face and said, "Nope, we're competitive and we're gonna try to, change a lot of people's minds." So I like the Bills. I mean, they got a win against the Dolphins.
Has to mute because his hatred.
Yeah,
I can't stand that team, dude. I don't know. I think it's because they gave up that play against Kansas City in the playoffs where they let Travis Kelce run 80 yards downfield uncoved to tie the game with a field goal. Yeah, I'm like, what the heck are you guys doing, man? But I think, until they prove it, they're pretenders to me. I think if the Broncos drew them in the playoffs, that would be awesome because I don't fear them at all.
And we won.
I mean, they're going to be a 3 seed. Yeah. They're going to be the 3 seed. So, if you want to play them, you got to get at least the 6 seed, and then you would get them in Buffalo. So
and
there's a path there.
In Buffalo, yeah.
There's
they won there last year. Yep.
And it wasn't a good game either.
Those guys, so.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember the last year's game in Buffalo, that was not a good game by the Broncos. They were not. I mean, the defense really came through for the Broncos last year in that game. It wasn't really the offense, because if you realize, I mean, the Broncos should have lost that game again. 12 men on defense, like that's a loss. The Broncos should have lost that game, but like the Bills just gifted it to the Broncos, and we're like, thank you very much. And see that's. I'm not saying last year was like but like last year there were so many wins that were gifted to us, right? Where this year is like at least we're seeing less of that. Where it's like, oh, this is missed field goal. I mean, there was that one game against the Jets, but last year, if we play the Bills in the playoffs, hey, I'm welcoming it. Steelers, yes. If it's Chargers, yes, but if it's the Bengals or the Chiefs, we're screwed.
Ask yourself this question: would you rather see a Super Bowl winning quarterback who has a vendetta against you, or a quarterback in the NFL playoffs who has proven to be a choke artist over and over and over again in Josh Allen?
I mean, hey, but remember early in Peyton's career, people were saying he's just a regular season quarterback. These guys are still young. They're still in their 20s. I mean, at this point, we need to hope that some of them can knock off Patrick and keep him off the throne a little bit here. But
Lamar.
Please.
Yeah, I mean,
not like last year when they made stupid play calling in the championship game.
But the AFC is like
they're really,
and it just falls off a cliff.
Yeah,
100%. There's three really good. Well, I'd say there's two really good teams, and then everyone else.
You're a Bills hater, so I think
I am a Bills hater. I am. I don't think that offense is good. I don't think their defense is good. Like who's rushing the passer for Buffalo? Von Miller's like 85 years old now. Like that's not. Who's afraid of that team, dude? I'm not.
Maybe the Dolphins.
Yeah, they'll be lucky to make it after today's loss. But hey, and we got the deadline this week too. So some of these teams could get better. Yeah. Some things could look different going into next week too, because I think the deadline's Tuesday. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
One thing again, about to wrap up, but I'm kind of glad that the Broncos are not doing much at the trade deadline, just to be safe, because again, the Broncos need more draft picks, because I'd rather them not listen. I know people say, "Oh, we need defense, we need offense." Honestly, this is just a growth year. This is a rebuild year. Coming to this year, people had the Broncos who had them at 4 or 5 wins max, right? ESPN. And, Adam pointing to himself. I had the Broncos. Okay, so my ceiling was 9-8, floor is 6-11. I'm fine if the Broncos don't make the playoffs. As long as we see 8-9 wins, I'm happy, because, again, Bo Nix, this is his first year. And, again, we want to see wins. And I guess, after games like this, you just want to rant away and you just want to talk crap about the Broncos all you want, but still, this is a rebuild year for the Broncos, and this is going to take a while. Even Sean Payton's alluded to it, and this is. I mean, you look at the Texans last year. People thought the Texans were going to be better, but not like a playoff team whatsoever with C.J. Stroud. Look what happened. Now that's a one case scenario. I mean, you look at the Commanders, right? They're having a year to remember, right? Where last year they were just bad. Like they had Sam Howell as their quarterback. Right. So, for some teams it's quick, some teams it's not. And for the Broncos, they're just one of those teams that's going to take a while to turn this thing around. I think it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. We'll find our way. And we got to find talented player on the team, especially offensively, run the football. Defensively, we're all set, right? We, maybe get another guy in the draft, and, that day will come next year when we do it live. But it's just, this I think we're fine. Again, yes, we would like to make the playoffs, but you know what? I'm satisfied where we're at right now. But yes, we want to make the playoffs. We want to end this how many year streak it is without being the playoffs. It's so long. I've already lost track. So it's just at this point, I'm glad that the Broncos are being conservative and
close to a decade.
Right? Yeah, close to a decade. So I'm glad the Broncos are being conservative and just saying, hey, next year we need those draft picks, because you just can't. You can't trade them away and then think, oh, we're going to make the playoffs, and then you don't, because it's either you go all in or you just wait till next year.
Yeah, I would say, Steven, that it's easy to get excited about the Broncos, and we all want to be, and that's fine. But realize where they're at. They are not the Chiefs. They are not the Ravens. They're not, these teams yet. Not yet. They're getting there. Yeah. We have to be patient. We can't rush this right now. The Broncos are the Broncos. This is a development year, whether Sean Payton wants to admit it or not. And the last thing I would say on that, Steven, that I agree with you on, is if they make the playoffs with this roster, Sean Payton's the coach of the year.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
With this offense, no tight ends, you have no receivers, you have a rookie quarterback, and you make the playoffs, that's very impressive, and it also lends itself to a lot of success in the future when the Broncos, like we talked about last week, Steven, $75 million in cap space next year. They're going to go nuts and try to add to this offense. So I think only good things ahead, but I'm going to be realistic with people and say they're not that team yet, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Yeah. John.
But making the playoffs, making the playoffs is maybe foreshadowing and a reason for free agents to come here. If you win 5 or 6 games, or we just go on this losing streak and you lose all these games, who the hell wants to play here? Nobody's wanted to play here since Peyton left. But if you could, to all your points you just said, if you can, a rookie quarterback, you're buried under the Russell Wilson cap penalty. You know, if you can overcome all of that and even become a playoff team, you start adding weapons with the cap space, and now you have your first and second round picks back. Those are the years we're talking about. This is a prove it year. Sean's the coach, Bo's the quarterback, and we're moving forward. And we're going to forget about these last 8 years and all the jokes about the carousels and the quarterbacks and the coaches that we've had to endure watching the Broncos games as fans. This is the year that you can stop all that, and I think we're doing that.
100%.
Absolutely.
Well said.
Yeah. I'm excited for next year. Again, growth year. We'll see what happens this year. Again, we still have a lot of games left. The Broncos can make the playoffs. If they do, great. If they don't, hey, build till next year. That's really what's all about. So, again,
and don't let the Raiders get Shador.
Yeah, or yeah,
I will throw up for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
I don't care about that. I just know Shador to Brock Bowers because I'm a CU and a Georgia fan, and no, thank you, dude. No,
we might have to quit the podcast if Shador or
I agree.
If somebody if Travis Hunter goes to the Raiders, we're gonna quit the podcast. We're just gonna say peace out. Have a good decade, Broncos fans. We're doomed.
Gardner can throw to Travis.
Right. Well, anyway, folks, I think that's going to wrap up this week's podcast for the Broncosaurus podcast. Adam, myself, and Sean, we appreciate you all for tuning in to tonight's episode of the podcast. Catch us for next week when hopefully we get better results, or at least better news and better stuff to talk about your Denver Broncos if the Broncos show up on Sunday against the Chiefs. We shall find out. Well, folks, again, appreciate you. Thank you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, appreciate it. Feel free to hit the subscribe button. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you. And we appreciate your follow. And we hope you have a great week. Stay safe out there. And as always, Broncos country. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.
Let's go.
Yes,
I almost said let's ride. I don't want to say. Yeah, don't say let's ride. I don't want to hear that.